So this is a really well subscribed breakout room. So Fiona Murray, I'm going to ask you to give me some assistance, because it was supposed to be a double act between me and Elizabeth, but she's had to dive off.
Of course, no worries.
Thank you so much. So we've been asked a number of questions, and it seems that the way that these slides are set up is tiny for me, but I hope they're a little bit bigger for you. Are they tiny or big?
No, it's kind of, certainly for me, it's middle-sized on this screen.
Okay. So they're so tiny on my screen, I can't even see what they're saying.
You can maybe choose your layout differently, Bridget. If you press the 3 buttons and
yeah, that's fine.
Choose a different viewing.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. So as you know, we're recording this. So if you're not happy to be on screen, then please turn your videos off. But this group, what we need to do is think about and come up with some solutions and some actual actions, and what we're going to take forward as the Outdoor Recreation Network and as our own organisations going forwards. So I think it would be helpful, bearing in mind we have heard so much in the last 2 days about all of the barriers and to inclusion that people are facing out there. But in terms of those barriers for low-income people, it'd be really helpful for me to learn from you. What do you think are the main ones that you are either experiencing or that you've learned about, and we should focus on as an industry going forwards? And I'd be really grateful if you could raise a hand and come on screen and sort of share your thoughts and experiences as a wider group of people now. So I have got my pen at the ready, and happy to take feedback and hands up.
Do you want me to kick off? Just to take the pressure off everybody else.
And do you want to say who you are and where you come
Yes, I'm Fiona Murray. I'm from Forestry and Land Scotland. So we are what used to be Forestry Commission Scotland. I work as Visitor Partnerships Manager, so with the tourism and other bits of visitor services. I think an issue that we have, particularly outside the Central Belt, is enabling people to get to some of our forests and woodland because the public transport is pretty poor. So that's a definite barrier in lots of areas of Scotland. And in terms of stakeholders we need to involve, there are transport operators and Transport Scotland, the parts of government that are involved in that. It's not something we can do alone. But what we can do is look at what currently exists, and one of the quick wins that we have is as we upgrade our website is listing where our sites are accessible by public transport, easily accessible by public transport. It may not be right to the door, to the gate, but it may be within a short distance.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. So you kind of highlighted there's an infrastructure problem that's not just about the infrastructure on the ground, it's about the infrastructure to get people to countryside locations, from the get-go, really. Yeah. So, okay, anybody else like to come in? Oh, you're all being so shy.
I've got my hand up.
Hey, excellent.
Hey. So Kirsty Halford, I'm from Thames Water, and I am Access, Recreation and Nature Reserves Manager. So I suppose one of the biggest barriers that we face, certainly in London, is that people aren't used to opening and accessing their green space. So it's not something they've done as a family. It's so just trying to welcome that sort of demographic in, where they think they need to spend money, or it's just not for them. So we have Walthamstow Wetlands, which opened up about 2.5–3 years ago. It's a 211 hectare nature reserve on an operational site. And I think COVID has actually really helped, because it's got people out in their local area. But again, it's keeping that group involved and working with partners to bring those people onto site.
Yeah, so you've sort of and they're an outreach type of challenge then, really, haven't you? An outreach to people in their communities to sort of help them be aware of and help them access what you already have as infrastructure. And
also valuing it. You know, from a lot of the community consultations that we did in the very early stages, they'd never seen a duck, they'd never seen a swan. They didn't really look up at the trees or the sky or the landscape and stop and take that time. They were in a busy city, and it was the fact that it never even dawned on them to stop and look. So sometimes it was as simple as telling them to stop and opening their eyes and looking around them. They'd walked past the site 20,000 times on the way to work and not even acknowledged that it was there.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Kirsty. That's really, really interesting. And I'm sure we'll follow up that theme very shortly. So thank you.
We've got a few other hands up.
Yep. So I'm going to go to Alison and then to Richard. So Alison Cross.
Hi, I'm Alison and I work, I'm an outdoor learning officer, so Forest of Bowland, AUMB in East Lancashire, and I'm on a Pendle Hill Landscape Partnership. So Pendle Hill, really close to mill towns such as Cole, Nelson, Briarfield, Blackburn. We have an amazing array of about 3 million people from like an hour distance wise. They come up the hill and it's brilliant. But what we struggle with, one of the barriers of all the ones you've mentioned, definitely, but also kit, the right footwear, the right appropriate kind of outfits. And as an outdoorsy person going up Pendle, I would be in my walking boots. I would have 5 extra layers packed with me because it's 5 degrees difference at the top compared to the bottom. And I have my OS map and I know there's no signal, there's no cafe at the top. But what we struggle is that communication of those factors. So the simple thing we thought at the start, well, we'll just have a sign that says, have you got all these things, you know, at the bottom of the hill? But then we realised that creates a barrier and people could interpret that as, oh, it's not for me. They're telling me to turn around and go away because I can't afford walking boots. I can't afford these things. So we haven't got that information. We do communicate the brief preparedness and the countryside code, which obviously, as we all know, is going through a revamp, and lots of people don't realise what the countryside code is and exists. And I think the small things would be the reliance on your phone signal, and we found that is a huge barrier actually. People sometimes get lost driving to the site. We've had people saying we couldn't find it and we couldn't find how to get there because our phone didn't work when we got closer to the ruralness of the location. And then we didn't know, once we found the car park, we didn't know how to speak and communicate, because I find a lot of people, if they're going for the first time and they see us keen outdoorsy people, we might not come across as the most approachable because, oh, they're knowledgeable and I will feel stupid if I ask which way to go. So, well, there's a few barriers. I don't have any answers right at the moment, but what we are doing is a lot of communication with those community groups that do use it, talking to group leaders. We've got so many great partners within different communities of the low-income families that I work with personally. And social media, I think that is one of the biggest assets I think any group can have. I'll leave it there anyway, thank you.
So thank you, Alison, that's really amazing, and you should probably be one of our next speakers the next time we have a conference, because I think you've got some really interesting examples to give there and to share. So thank you very much for coming on screen. I'm going to go to Richard next.
Hiya, how you doing? My name's Richard and I'm from Pass for All up in Scotland. Really, it's just a little bit of a kind of observation that something I've noticed during my work with Pass for All and working with community groups in disadvantaged areas. In disadvantaged areas, there's obviously lots of people on kind of low incomes, and generally the kind of walking environment and green spaces in these kind of disadvantaged disadvantaged areas are quite often very unwelcoming. There's a kind of, it's quite often local authorities will feel reluctant to kind of invest in these areas because they feel that there's going to be a risk of vandalism. So there'll be no, for example, there'll be no signage, no interpretation, no benches and things like that. So generally the kind of environment just always seems kind of quite unwelcoming. And if we could do a little bit more to improve these environments, then people in these kind of disadvantaged areas will feel a bit more confident about kind of venturing out and exploring their green spaces in their local areas. And I think that would be, you know, it kind of puts them in a kind of positive kind of mindset and kind of maybe makes them feel a bit more confident about kind of continuing to explore green spaces and accessing other areas beyond their home. So yeah, generally I just kind of notice that quite often in these areas where we want to, there's people there we want to encourage out, just the kind of the opportunities on their doorstep aren't very welcoming. So it'd be really good to kind of see these areas as kind of improved.
Right. So I'm just writing as we go. Okay, no, that's great. So you're linking really back to the infrastructure side of things, aren't you, as well as the communication side of things. So making sure that some of the really good examples that we've seen over the last couple of days of making it really welcoming are translated more widely across the outdoor sector. And then the comms and the outreach to communities to sort of ensure that welcome, that visitor welcome, is really good. Linking back to what Alison was saying is there as well. So it's more than one dimension to this, isn't there, as with all these things. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind taking your hands down, Alison, Richard and Kirsty, that would be great. So I'm going to move on to the second question now.
Chloe, did you get a chance to speak?
Oh, sorry, I can't see that one.
Oh, she's got her hand down now.
Yeah. Hi, yeah, I thought we ran out of time. I'm Chloe, I work for the RSPB on a partnership project in the Forth Valley in Scotland, and we're looking to engage our communities in a new project about climate resilience, and included in that is like improvement to the outdoor spaces. And most of the communities are within the most deprived. And it's been difficult because of COVID to not be able to go out and find groups and talk to people where they are. But I do feel a barrier is a lack of time, and that when we've invited people to virtual workshops, there's some very keen, interested groups, but they don't tend to be the low-income households that we're attracting. And so I think how to reach people either during work days or evenings it is a bit of a challenge for us. Thanks.
Yeah, so Chloe, did you find you were getting the the groups and the people that are kind of already engaged, either through your networks or others, that were coming to those sessions? But
yes.
Those really harder to reach people were still staying away.
Yeah, and perhaps if there happen to be a community association or development trust that has paid positions, they may be attended, maybe a community council, but still overall a real lack of representation. Maybe inclination as well is an issue, but I did feel like lack of time was a barrier.
Okay. That's interesting, because that goes back to Pammy's conversation from yesterday, doesn't it? It is in don't expect people to come to us. We need to go to them.
Yeah, we need to get out, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Chloe. Okay. I'm going to move on to the second question now. And so be really interested to hear how you think we should be working in partnership with low income groups in new ways or in new formats, you know, based on what you've heard over the last couple of days.
Bridget, can I just point out that there, just in case people haven't noticed, there is actually a chat going on which is entitled Room 1. So Alison made the point that time is another barrier. Some of the families I work with have 3 jobs and are juggling that and family time, so we need to be flexible when we offer face-to-face sessions to suit their needs.
Yeah,
I'll keep an eye on that chat.
Can you? Because I can't see both at the same time. I can't see
no worries.
Peter and chat. Thanks, Fiona. That's brilliant. No, really, really good point, Alison. I think it's particularly, you know, we've had stories, haven't we, during these lockdown periods of people juggling multiple jobs and trying to home educate. And I really, take my hat off to anybody that's found themselves in that situation, because it's been incredibly challenging, and one that I don't think is going to go, away anytime soon. So yeah, time is not something I wrote down initially in my little thinking about this. So I think that's a really good point. Okay. Right, so how do we work in partnership with this group? And Rachel, you have got your hand up.
Hi, yeah, I actually had my hand up for the previous question,
but
now that you said the second question, I think it's much more fitting, because it was basically in response to some of the barriers and challenges that others raised, and some of the things that I'm trying to do in order to address those. So basically, I've just recently set up ORN Outdoors, and I'm organising first-time hiking experiences for groups to try and bridge people to the outdoors who perhaps face all sorts of barriers. A lot of them, I have to say, is more about that sort of sense of belonging. But all these other sort of financial barriers build towards that lack of belonging and feeling like I don't look like them and therefore it's not for me. So just a couple of the things that were said. So around kit, for example, what I try and do is when I'm going with a group, try and ideally work through organisations who already know that those people are going to benefit from the experience, but also working in direct contact with the participants. So it's really thinking about what they might already have. So to try and not say you need to have a Gore-Tex jacket, and not say that you need to have new leather hiking boots or something, but really thinking about what they do have. And I do have some kit, and I've actually been able to get quite a lot of donations, because a lot of outdoorsy people have extra kit or things that didn't fit and then they don't use them. But for example, just saying things like sturdy trainers or sports clothing like leggings, and then talking about layers of clothing and also the things to avoid. So whether it's cotton clothes or jeans. So trying to be a little bit more speaking about what they might, thinking first of all what they already have. And then, of course, being clear on what the absolute minimum is that you need in terms of equipment. So even carrying a bag, for example, so I told everyone to bring a rucksack of some sort, like a backpack. I think I called it a backpack rather than a rucksack. But then someone still comes with like a gym bag, like a shoulder bag that someone struggled a little bit, but it worked fine. It was just about making sure, though, that everyone has a bag that if they then take off layers, they have somewhere to put it. So there's little things like that, but it's also thinking about, first of all, what people already do own, likelihood that they can sort of use for this activity. The other thing was about the transport, the public transport. So I would organise hikes specifically where we can go with public transport, and then I will actually meet them to take the public transport together. So it's really handing over some of the sort of knowledge and the skills that we might take for granted and the confidence, so that they can just repeat the day, exactly repeat the day that we've had together, maybe with their own family or with their own friends or with their own kids. So taking the bus together and then getting there, and then they can see, okay, this is where the walk starts. The other thing is in terms of maps, that is probably a real issue, because it's not just in terms of having the maps, but also being able to use them. So ideally going for paths that have some signposting, so that when you get there, you can sort of feel like you're being navigated through it. The other thing, a big one, is childcare. So I was organising a hike with a group of mums from a deprived neighbourhood in Glasgow, and the childcare was a big one. And so a lot of the members of this group were either had refugee status or were navigating the asylum system in Scotland. And yeah, so one thing we did, we had a bit of project funding, is we actually gave them money for childcare, so that they could come on the trip by themselves and actually have the day for themselves. And that was for many the first time they'd ever been away from their children, and they loved it. So it was just having that day out for themselves and focusing on themselves and doing this for themselves. And the other thing with that also was that it was, for some of them, it was the first time that their husband looked after the kids. So that's just another thing to be aware of, is that those arrangements need to be made, and often they might not be able to leave the home for different reasons. Yeah, there were just a couple of things, but I know there's lots more challenges that I'm personally not aware of, so it's just kind of through conversations and through meeting these people that you find out what actually stops them leaving their house or leaving the city.
We've got a couple of interesting points on the chat there. Chloe Hatton saying she agrees, she thinks working with local organisations that communities trust is absolutely key. Paula, will I just read this out, or would you like to add anything to this? You're talking about the community where you're based, which is the most affluent area, and this community automatically assume that people from different backgrounds would cause antisocial behaviour issues that will impact their area. So they often object to plans that are being developed and don't see the positives of engagement and outdoor access for a variety of different user groups. I can see that actually where I live, in the outskirts of Edinburgh. And Emma Edwards-Jones said lack of confidence brought about by life changes is a barrier. We deliver a project called Baby Active in North Wales, helping get babies active outdoors in their first 1,000 days. It's a great idea. Good for both mum, parent or carer and baby, but they often lack confidence to do it. And a couple of other people saying, commenting about your mums getting away, childcare issue, dad's getting the kids for a while, great. And Alison has also commented the same comments that you were making about kit, Rachel, and then she normally ends up wearing whatever footwear the other participants have on, wellies or trainers rather than walking boots. Great, so that's me for now.
Thanks, Fiona.
That's a good one about wearing the same kit, because also if you're leading a hike, sometimes you don't know what becomes a challenge if you're not wearing the same equipment. Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a good one. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thanks for coming on screen and sharing with us. I'm going to move to Eloise now.
Hi, perhaps I should have just typed in the chat box because I know my internet connection is not the best today, so I do apologise if it breaks up. But yeah, I really loved Rachel's answer, and I suppose just to add, based on some of the work we've been doing, so I work with the RSPB in Glasgow, and we work with lots of community groups. The projects we work on are in areas that are high on the SMID index of multiple deprivation. We work with lots of schools and community groups. It's all about sort of connecting them to local green spaces and making those spaces better for nature and more accessible for people. So anyway, I would say that in our experience on our project, probably one of the most useful things, the useful approaches has just been, I know it sounds ridiculously simple, but just been to listen. So actually, don't make any assumptions. The worst thing you can do is make assumptions of people's challenges, of people's opportunities, of people's interests based on them being from a low-income area or household. You know, I think that we often do an exercise that we call it a negative thought cloud. So basically, it's so therapeutic, just giving everyone an opportunity to get all their anxieties, all their barriers, all their potential issues just out in the open. And actually we found that through lockdown it's really useful to do this virtually as well, because you can often do this in an anonymous way. You know, if you're in a room of people, you kind of have to put your hand up, and some people don't want to admit things like, oh, you know, it's hard for me to, you know, afford this or do that, you know, or travel here. But if you do it in an anonymous space, like we've been using a tool called WooClap, which has been really good and actually allows people to just anonymously share their answers in a group environment. So yeah, I find it's been really useful. Yeah, I'd say other than that, just like recognizing some of the the core challenges that people with low income face. Like I say, listening to those and then trying to put a positive spin on it, like trying to say, right, so here are the barriers, and don't just leave it on that negative. Like, if you leave it there, everyone's just kind of disengaged from it. You kind of have to then build on it and say, right, so how do we actually overcome these? And instead of trying to go away and find that solution yourself, actually ask the group. Like, don't try and be the, it's not really up to you to be able to solve other people's problems, because you won't truly know what they are unless you experience them yourself. So actually ask the group, how would you like these to be resolved? What would be the best case scenario for you? And if you have parameters and limits within your project, you can highlight these at the start and say, listen, we only have this amount of time, we only have this amount of funds, whatever it is, and allow people to workshop that and find the solutions themselves. And then they feel like they have more ownership of that. They've come to that. They've come through that whole process themselves. They really sort of bought into it, and they're more invested in it. That's all.
No, that's brilliant. And in the chat, can you just say, do you just call it you clap or woo clap?
So it was called woo clap. So yeah, I'll put it in the chat box. To be honest, I'm sure like a lot of us using digital outreach, especially like with community groups and schools, etc. You've tried lots of things, and some things are great and some things are awful. But this one I found has been particularly useful for me. It might not be a good fit for everyone, but yeah, I'll put a link for it in case anyone's interested. Thanks,
Eloise. That's brilliant. Okay. Don't make assumptions. I've written that down in big letters. So thank you for that. We haven't got an awful lot of time left, so I would really like just to spend a couple of moments on what other stakeholders do we need to involve before getting from you some of the reflections on the three sort of things that you're going to take away from this and possibly implement when you get back into your day jobs. So does anybody have any thoughts about other stakeholders that we need to involve that we're currently not engaging with as an industry? Obviously, taking into account that we've just spent 2 days thinking about the stakeholders and their preferences and a little bit of time about who the groups of people that are not accessing the countryside, so or outdoor recreation not in the countryside. So yeah, be happy to take feedback on other stakeholders. Obviously, that's quite a hard question to ask maybe, and a quite hard question to answer. So I'll leave that one, maybe Parent Club Scotland. Yeah, good example. I'm not so familiar with the groups in Scotland, but I'm sure that's one that some people on this call will find helpful. So thank you. I'll leave you to post those kinds of groups and those stakeholders into the chat channel, and maybe we spend our last few moments thinking about the 3 steps or actions that you can commit to as you sort of leave this conference and this forum and go back, as I say, to your day job. So does anybody feel confident in sharing? It doesn't have to be 3, it can be 1. I might put Fiona on the spot and ask her what she's going to do differently.
Well, I usually go straight to we are lucky if we have an equality and diversity manager, but I think I would like to feel a bit more knowledgeable, more empowered. So in terms of this, I'm going to look into because I've got a national remit, I'm going to look into some of the national, thank you for some of those tips actually, like Parent Club Scotland and so on. I'm going to actually go and look at some of these things, so I don't have to always go straight to Amy, but some things I may be able to sort out myself when requests come in for information.
Excellent, thanks Fiona, that's helpful. Kirsty, I love your comment there. Talk. The more you speak to individuals and groups about your sites and projects, new stakeholders come out of the woodwork. They absolutely do. And you go off in directions that you didn't know that you were going to go in when you first start. So I really agree with that. Talk. I think for me, if I want to share my thoughts, working at a national level like Fiona, I think for me it's getting some of these messages that we've heard about over the last 2 days to our senior leadership team, and sort of more widely shared within our senior leadership team nationally. And then also I've noticed that I've got quite a few colleagues that have been on this journey with us over the last 2 days. And for me, it's engaging with those people and finding out from them, I think, what they are going to do as a result, and what support they need from me as a national representative to sort of facilitate them in their day jobs as well. Because I don't think this, this shouldn't stop with me just chairing this session. It should, it should really be sort of a topic that we focus on throughout the organisation. And I know that we've got various groups going on already within our organisation looking at diversity and inclusion, and low income people certainly need to be as much for focus as any other group within that work. So that's kind of my take homes.
I love what Paula's just written. I think that's really excellent. I'll take that on as well. It was just going to review all events in our programme, see what language we use and make sure this is more inclusive, as well as providing more information about transport options. I think that the stuff that your colleagues shared, Bridget, about the language being used in social media and so on, I think that was really, really good. And I think while we're probably okay at doing that facing out, but that's something that we need to address within our organisation in terms of the dry strategic stuff that we have, that all those interminable documents. But I think there's something, interestingly enough, something I was literally doing today as a result from yesterday. We've just created some new internal guidance about events, and we were referring to protected characteristic groups, which I know is a really clunky term, but as of this morning, I actually changed that to underrepresented groups, and see here for a list of protected characteristics. So I think language is incredibly important. Rachel May has also said, I'd like to be better at engaging participants and expressing their challenges and designing the solutions. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's a really good one from Chloe. To include a specific strand of work related to inclusion and diversity and planning for the next financial year. Absolutely. Making it part of our job plans if it's not already. Absolutely. Finding the reason why people want to get away to the outdoors, and then tap into those reasons, create those offers, suit their needs, not ours. So, Alison, I really hope that over the last 2 days we've given you a lot of insight into, and some connections with some people now to be able to find those that insight and to take it forward. I think Trudy's session yesterday from Sport England about the sort of the whole movement, getting the nation moving, and the insight she showed there should and possibly could help you with that as well. And in the last, I'm expecting us to be going back any moment now to the. Yeah,
there's just been an alert from Jane saying, giving us a 5-minute warning.
Oh,
Chairs in each room, please bring discussion to a close.
Okay. Okay. Oh, you're giving me lots of great stuff. Thank you so much for posting. Co-design approach, yeah. Feedback to the Local Access Forum and colleagues. Thanks, Sarah. I love the one from Kirsty about a lot of the sites are managed in partnership. We have that too. I'm going to challenge more in understanding how and who they're actually targeting. Sometimes feel they choose the easy wins, don't we all? We absolutely all do. And I think as we reopen our facilities, post lockdown, I think from our perspective in England, we're just going to be focusing on trying to manage the number of people that we're expecting to visit us over the next few months, actually targeting people and that might feel excluded at the moment is going to be really way down on that priority list with the people that are working out on sites. So I think as the tidal wave of people and new visitors sort of maybe flattens out a bit as we get into the summer, I think that will be the chance for us to focus on new groups. And thank you so much for joining.